All right, good morning.
Okay, I think we're going to get started. I guarantee the doors are going to be opening and closing, so we're just going to start with like an easy, brief introduction, right?
Yeah. I'm Aaron, my wife Kaleena. I don't know if you heard, but Brother James was talking about getting to hang out with our family this morning, one of our family theme songs up there. We love being here at One Life and being able to connect and see with you. When they asked the question today of why do you want to be here, we started that first exercise. One of the things I wrote down was to be able to meet people, to inspire others, and be inspired by others. So it's just awesome to come together to be here for One Life. Kaleena, you do any introduction and maybe talk about kind of what our life used to be like. What was it like 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, so has anybody read our book or has heard of our book other than my best friend Brandy? And, a couple of people. Holy smoke. Okay, thank you so much. So we have a book, The 5-Hour School Week, and really that came out of a really difficult time in our life 6 or 7 years ago. We did everything that you hear you're supposed to do when you're not in rooms like this. Right, we followed all the shoulds. We started the businesses and we bought the big houses and we had the fancy cars and we worked a lot. We built really successful businesses. We had 4, at the time 3 beautiful, healthy babies. And we were really, really miserable because I think a lot like what Cody was just talking about is we let everybody else write our story. And so, why don't you...
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think back to what our life was like, right? Like a typical morning. As we're getting ready. What was a typical morning like in our house?
So if you have kids and you're rushing out the door for school in the morning, like we're waking up 5 a.m. in the morning. First thing in the morning, we're yelling, like, you've got to hurry, we've got to go. We're throwing homework into backpacks. We're throwing, Pop-Tarts in the toaster. Aaron's going to work crazy hours. I'm yelling at children in the minivan on the way to school, just to go to work, right? Drop the kids off, go to work, work, all the craziness of that. Pick my kids up at 3 o'clock, and it's a disaster, right? The school got the best hours of the day. I dropped them off. They were happy. They learned. They played-ish, whatever the school system provides in those moments. And then came home exhausted and tired, and I got the leftovers. And so I was a miserable mom. I had these children. That was my biggest dream, was literally to be a parent. Like, becoming an entrepreneur was great. Being married was great. But really, I wanted those babies, and I wanted to enjoy motherhood, and it wasn't happening for me. Like, I was miserable and burnt out and crying at the end of every single day.
Yeah, and to go into some of that, right? Like when we pick up our kids from school, that's when they're burnt out, right? Their sugar's low, they're tired, they're exhausted when they get into the car, and you're wanting to be like, hey, how are you? And it was, and they weren't recharged when we picked them up. There was always, we would drop them off on the way to school. She was getting them ready, she was getting them psyched, like getting them energy and ready to go in for that kind of battle, and then we'd pick them up and they'd be used up. We're like, man, this is it was tough. Yeah, and but we also said the thing that we always say, like, life is supposed to be tough. Like, just suck it up and do it. Everybody's doing this. This is what it's supposed to be. And that was like a lie that we would tell ourselves. So we would go to the soccer practices and we'd go to the next spots, and then we would get home and we'd say, okay, let's eat really quick because you need to start your homework and you need to do your 20 minutes of reading and you need to go do that. And there was a night that one of our daughters said, it's Madeline, our oldest, and we made the most things wrong with our oldest. And she said, guys, can I please just not do the homework tonight? I earned a free homework pass. So as part of her thing, she earned like a pass to not have to do homework that night. And she goes, it's mine. Can I just use it tonight? I'm tired. And we were like, no, you can't. Like, you have to do the reading. You have to do the homework.
We can't fall behind.
Right.
Who feels like that? We just can't fall behind, and we can't let our children fall behind.
It was this big stress. Like, no, you can't fall behind. And so she still did it, but then we went to bed that night, and we were laying in bed, and we were like having this kind of epiphany, like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. What's going on? We did everything we were supposed to do, just like she said. We did our stuff. We had our businesses. Our kids went to school at a great private school. We were doing everything we were supposed to be doing, and we were like, there's got to be something else.
Yeah, we were super discontent. So we would do what everybody in this room is doing, right? And we pivot. those that are sitting in this room are lucky enough to have that mentality even, because prior, right, we didn't come from families that knew about emotional intelligence or talked about growth mindset. My dad's a police officer and my mom's a teacher. So like you're talking about like, no, you do what you're told, you stand in line, you check the box, you get the grade, you get the diploma, you get the degree, you move on, you get the job, you work 8 to 5. And that's as good as it gets. Check the box, check the box, check the box. And we were so miserable. And so we started showing up in rooms like this with people who weren't telling us check the box, right? Don't stand in line. And so that's what we wanted to talk about the most, because that's when our life really, truly, fully changed, is when Aaron joined GoBundance, when we started coming to One Life, and we started writing our Bible, like what Cody was talking about, which I love so much, because we hold on to these mottos and these phrases and these things that get us through. And I want to talk about that because, well, I'll tell you in a little while. Let's talk about that first. So let's talk about what do we hear and say in rooms like this that like stand out? Like what are the most, what do you hold on to, or what have you heard in these rooms that have kind of like changed your life?
Like one thing that Cody said today that I want to put on the list was like, write your own story.
Right, write your own story. We live by like, who's heard like Jim Rohn says, pick your 5, right? Anyone here? No? Oh my goodness, yeah, some people, okay.
You're gonna hear lots of things this weekend that are about like how to make your life better.
Right.
And so like the pick your 5 is like you're gonna be the summary of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to do something in your life, you have to hang out with people that are going to get you closer, like the people that are doing that. If you want to start a business, you need to hang out with the people that have been starting businesses. So
live outside the box, right? Don't join the rat race.
The big one for me was my first One Life that I went to when Chris Lockhead was speaking, and he said, "Who said you can't have it all?"
Yeah.
Because we lived very similarly, and it was like you have to sacrifice so much in order to have this 1 or 2 things. Like, why can't you design a life that has it all?
Exactly.
Right. That was the big one for me.
Right. Why can't it look like it should?
It has to look different than everybody else.
Right. And we sit in these rooms and we say, go live your own life. Think outside of the box. Right? Create your destiny. Follow your passions, and success will follow. Right? That's what you're going to hear. If you have not sat in rooms similar to this or gone to other growth mindset functions, and that's what you're going to hear over the next couple of days, is about creating your own life and following your passions and truly living your best life. And so we started doing that. Aaron and I had a failed marriage. After 10 years, he had a failed business. We went completely broke. We lost over $1 million in 1 year. I was calling divorce attorneys. I was seeing my kids a couple hours of the day, and I couldn't stand who I was as a parent. I was miserable. I was angry. I was exhausted. All the walls, right? Aaron's dad passed away early, like he wasn't supposed to. It was like all the things. We had all the catastrophes, and all the walls were falling in, and we're like, what do we do? And so we came to rooms like this, and we grew. We changed. Like, we fixed our marriage. And we fixed our businesses. Like Aaron has grown amazing businesses in the last 6 years. And we redesigned our roles in our family. And we were taught how to do that in places like this.
So a big part of that, right? So it's not just that bad part of the story, right? So we had these things that prompted that change. And my dad died way before he was supposed to, and that was sometimes to make big changes, we need to have these big changes happen. Even though we were in the middle of it, we had still said, like, life is hard. Right? Life is supposed to be hard. I went to school like this. I grew up like this. It made me tougher. My kids can have the same tough lifestyle that I had, right? But my dad died, right? And that made us really start to call a whole bunch of things into question, and we lost a bunch of money, right? A few years prior, we were like, wow, we were making so much money, and we were spending it on all the wrong things. And when my dad passed away, he died with a lot of regret. He died with money in the bank and things that he wished he would have done. Right? And so that really started to have us change, and we kept saying, God, if we ever get another chance of this, we're sure going to do it different. Right? As we tried to figure out what our new businesses were going to be and the new normal was, we were like, wow, we had nannies raising our kids, we were wasting money on stupid things, and now we don't have any of it anymore. And we can't pay our bills with those things that we spent our money on, and how are we going to keep it? So we said, if we ever if we ever get this new chance, we're really going to live our life different. And that was part of our song that Brother James was singing this morning was, it's like experiences over things, right? Like living every day to the fullest, living it like it's our last. And so we said, if we ever give it back, we're going to spend money on experiences over things instead. We're not going to buy stuff. It's going to be about this family lifestyle. And we did. And so there was rooms like this that helped us refocus. And a few years ago at a One Life conference, I was on a stage and I was telling people about how I use the Miracle Morning and the 4-hour work week to really rewrite our lifestyle. And so I said, how are we going to really, really change our life? And on stage I was telling people, hey, you need to work more efficiently. You shouldn't be working in jobs you hate, right? So instead of going to work 50, 60 hours a week and just barely getting by, you need to do a lot more, right? And so I was on stage going, work less, live more. Why do you want to be rich? Don't wait till you're rich to go start doing those things. Any of those things that you wanted to do, you should start doing now. At the end of it, a lady stood up and said, okay, that's great. You're telling us that we should only be working 4 hours a week and we should be doing things that we like. How does that apply to your kids? And we were like, wow, that was this profound moment, and it stumped me because, like Cody said, I was ready for a whole lot of questions, and I wasn't ready for that one. And so as we look at the things that, so over the next few days, you're gonna hear a lot of things, right? You're gonna write them down, make your own Bible, write your own story, choose your five people you're gonna hang out with the most that are gonna be the most influential. Don't get stuck in the rat race, right? Who said you can't have it all? Don't work at a job you hate, right? So as you come up with these things, that next question that we're going to challenge you with, and that Kaleena's going to go into a little bit of how we did, was yes, but how does that apply to your family? How does that apply to your kids? If you yourself are saying, I'm only going to hang out with the 5 most important people, how does that apply to your kids? If I'm telling you guys, don't go work in a job you hate, don't go do the same thing every day that you hate, how does that apply to your kids?
Right.
So how do we apply some of this stuff to our kids?
Yeah, it's such an interesting kind of cycle of how we got there, and I want you to understand that it was really a course of a few years that got us here, that our kids are with us during the day and we developed the 5-hour school week, because initially this started as our journey. And so if you're in your journey right now, I don't want you to skip ahead to your kids being in that also, because you have to get this, you have to get it first. You have to believe the mentality, you have to change your mindset first. That is so crucial to this journey, I feel like. And then what happened for us, so Aaron had read all the literature, and he was so excited, and so we were just having these big conversations about what he learned. Kaleena, what do you think about pick your 5? I'm like, whoa, right? So we would talk about this at night. And then he came home from One Life, and he goes, this lady challenged me and asked me about, well, what about our kids? And at that time, we're reading the literature, we're listening to the podcasts, we're writing our gratitude journals, we're doing the things, and you guys, there's still this piece of me that is super broken, and this isn't fixing it. And it was who I was as a mom, who I was as a parent and what our kids were living. And when that lady said that, I go, oh, we grew and we left them behind. Whoa, and we almost knocked over the projector screen. Let's not do that. So we left our kids behind, and we're growing and we're learning all of these things that are adding actual value to our lives. Our businesses are growing, we're happier than we've ever been, we're so content. And our kids are still coming home depleted and exhausted, and they're learning things that aren't bringing, adding actual value to their life. And they're depressed, and they have anxiety. My 4th grader had anxiety, she would throw up before spelling tests, right? And they were having drama with kids at school because they didn't get to pick their 5, right? We're saying only choose and do things that add value to our life, and then we're putting our kids in an environment that adds very little, if not any, and sometimes it's super toxic. And so that's how we developed the 5-hour school week. That was why, because I wanted to bring my kids along with me on this journey. And so so every time I learn one of these, right? When I talk about pick your 5, the 5 people that influence me, push me to be great, and they don't have to be like-minded necessarily, right? We don't only want to hang out with people that are just like us, but we do want to hang out with people that aren't toxic. We don't want to hang out with harmful people. That doesn't add value to our life. And so when I started to break apart these things that I needed to get rid of, and there was a lot of shedding in this process of growth mindset and emotional intelligence. There's a lot of things we figure out that we have to throw away. And I can't tell you what that is, because what you have to throw away may be super different than what I had to throw away. But like the friend thing, how I dealt with social interaction, that definitely needed to change. I had super toxic people, super toxic family in my life, and I had to eliminate that because I was setting the example for my kid, like this is how we live our life. And so bringing them along, it's this is how I live my life, and I need, like, watch it, and it better be worthy of watching, right? Like, that's what it really, truly comes down to. Am I living a life that is worthy of them watching, and are they close enough to me? Are they near me enough? Do they get to witness my life often enough that that sinks in? And I'm going a little bit off script, because Cody said one of the most powerful things today when she talks about, like, who we let write our stories. Right? Who does that? Who writes our stories? My parents wrote my story. My teachers wrote my stories. As a child, people write our stories from the youngest of ages. They tell us who we are and what we're going to be and what we're capable of. And when our peers write our stories, when we sit in classrooms of 30 and 40 people, they're writing our stories. They're telling us who they are. They're modeling the behavior that we walk out into the world with. All of the growth mindset stuff that we're having to unravel and work out in ourselves, it was because those stories were written 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? Our parents wrote those for us. Our teachers wrote that for us. And so, like, my biggest question is, like, who's writing your children's stories, right? Because they're going to be adults sitting in these rooms like we are. And that's what it's like. The 5-hour school week is about our focused time of how we homeschool. Like this week alone, we've been in New Mexico at the Hot Air Balloon Festival, and then in Santa Fe, and driving through Colorado. We were at 4 national parks and Disneyland for 14 hours yesterday. Like, our life is crazy, and if you follow me online, it looks absolutely nuts. It's a blast. Like, it's so fun. And I could not have told you parenting 6 years ago was fun or a blast. I was tired, and I was miserable, and it chalked up to, I thought it was going to be a lot better than this. And today, it's really like, I didn't know it could get this good, right? And that's the mind shift. That's what we're working for. That's why we come here, is to go like, how are we going to get to the things that we really want that's going to add immediate value? And in the process, how do we bring our kids, like literally pull our kids up alongside of us and say, listen, don't live for the weekend. Don't join the rat race like all your friends are going to. Because it's so because if we allow that, then they're not going to know how to unravel it just the same way that we don't know how to unravel it. 38 years old and I'm figuring this stuff out. If I can get my 12-year-old to figure it out now, we're going to save them so much pain and work that we're having to do now.
For us, part of that solution was homeschooling,
Yeah.
right? But for you guys, that solution will be all sorts of different things, right? So when we went to apply some of the stuff, like the choose your 5. One of the reasons we chose school as that option is our kids had to be friends with the people they were sitting next to in school, right? They didn't get to choose, right? So they were going to become who they were hanging out with, and who they were hanging out with was chosen by that teacher and who they were sitting next to, whether it was positive influence or negative influence. They weren't choosing that. So today, as we travel, their best friends are people that are part of our Fan Abundance community or other people throughout the U.S. So we go to these events, and that's who they get to hang out with, who are their growth mindset peers that help them become the best people they can be. When we say, like, don't get stuck in the rat race, I was on stage telling people, don't go work in a job you hate. But we were sending our kids to school, and they didn't like it. Right? And so that was like the biggest contradiction that we were telling them, no, you have to do this, but I was telling adults, do that. So one of the things that kind of scares people with the way we live our life is we challenge you to treat your children not just like their children, right? To let them be a part of writing that story now. And so if I'm telling other adults, like, hey, don't go sit in a job 40 hours a week, but we're making them go to a classroom and do that same thing, it's totally contradictory. So as you go through your weekend and you figure out different things that you want to apply to those life goals, again, for us, homeschooling was part of our answer, and we said if we ever got another chance, we were going to do things way different. So now we give away 30% of our income, right? Because we knew all those times when there was like, hey, if we could just have some of that money back that we wasted on stupid things, we might go broke again. right? But we know that if it happens, we're not gonna have regrets this time of things that we could have done and should have done. So we live every day like it's our last. We have those bucket list items for us. And again, this was the way that we've done it, and we just challenge you to find your own way. But now, like our bucket list, instead of saying someday, we're putting several things on the calendar every year. And it's like we're not waiting for later, because we don't know if, my dad passed away way before he was supposed to with all these things he was supposed to do. So we're gonna make sure that that's not our story, that if something happens, again, where if we lose it all in a few years, or something really changes with the real estate market or our businesses, or something catastrophic happens, we can go, you know what? We lived the best moments we could as a family with our kids. There's no lost time anymore. There's, so as you guys come up with, with your why and different things, we brought a little kind of packet that you can kind of keep as homework if you want to grab it at the end. But a lot of that challenge is kind of walking you through some steps of what is your role in your family, what is your role as a person. So some of my roles is I'm the guy that fixes stuff. I'm a dad. I'm the math teacher on occasion, right? So I'm the guy that makes the coffee, right? Like those are my roles, right? So those are my. So when you come in here and you say like, what are your roles? So that's like I'm the guy that makes the coffee, right? I'm also a boss. I'm also a brother. I'm also a son. You're gonna find as you start going through this, as you analyze that, there's probably like 30 or 40 roles you have in your life. And a son, a brother, a boss, a father, and you get to go through there and start to rate them and say like, what do I really like? What really fires me up? Being a dad, I love being a dad, right? That's one of the things that fires me up. I love being a husband. One of my roles in life is sometimes I'm a landlord that has to evict people. I don't love that part of my life, right? So then but as you challenge and go through, there's also things like, honestly, I don't love washing the dishes. But I don't have a way to really outsource that part yet. But there was a part too that when Kaleena started going through the challenging and her roles, one of the things that we would challenge you for is if you get to there's certain parts of your day and things that you're doing a lot of that you hate, see if you can outsource it. See if there's a different balance. Because if we're going to be living our best life as our families, and this may be the thing that you do before you even incorporate it with your families. What are the roles and the things that you do in your life? And what would be some of the changes? Maybe Kaleena want to talk about some of the changes that she did. And then it also walks you through about your why, figuring out what your why is, and then also challenging you. Like one of the things that happened recently for us is we were like, we're kind of going through a rut. We're having a few weeks where stuff's a little tougher. And we challenged ourselves we said, when was the time recently that we were like really, really on fire? Like when was the time recently that everything was great, that our parenting, that our spouse balance was great, our parenting balance was great? And remembering that time so you can, and what were we doing during that time? I don't know if you want to share on any of either some of this stuff or like when we were at our best.
So I just think that this stuff, number one, it's just so important to understand that just the act of living your life is such a learning experience. And so when it comes to your kids, like having them just walk through life with you, witnessing how you live your life, how other people live their life, getting them out of, you don't have to go to Haiti like we go to Haiti or travel for 2 or 3 weeks out of the month. Like, we know that that's not everybody's cup of tea, right? Yeah, my bestie. But there is like, but what are those values and philosophies and like the foundation of your life that really adds the most value that you want to make sure that you instill in your children? Because they are like just watching so closely. And just bringing them with you and modeling that on the biggest level is what's going to impact them the most. And just like Aaron said, we hit brick walls all the time. I have 4 children at home with me, like 4, and he travels a lot, like he's gone. And they don't go to school 7 hours a day, right? Yeah, some of you are like, oh my God, that sounds like a nightmare. Sometimes it is. I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it absolutely is, like they're kids. But what's important, like when we're hitting those seasons and we're exhausted, the reality is that we pivoted and we got off of our why and we changed roads, and there's a lot of unlearning to do as adults because we're taught all of these things like they're fact, right? People tell us, adults talk to us like, this is the one and only truth that exists, and then you become an adult and you're like, oh my God, that actually wasn't the truth, and now I need to unlearn that and I need to go back and like discover what's my truth. What's true to me? So we're like trying to figure all of this out, and like our kids need to be very cognizant of what we're doing so that they don't fall into the same traps, right? So I use a couple of different things when I get off path because that happens, and like when I'm just feeling overwhelmed and exhausted. And just like Aaron said, I go through like, what's my role? What am I doing on a daily basis right now? What's adding value and what's just a total time suck or an energy suck? And it's like, throw out that stuff. Throw out the stuff that's sucking the energy. Not like Rome wasn't built in a day, you guys. Like, keep it simple. Cody talked about it this morning, our one thing. Sometimes I need to wheel it all the way back to my one thing. And I can get caught up, like 5-hour school week stuff is fun. I love social media. Like, I get asked to like coach and speak and like, I could spread myself so thin. I have 4 kids that I'm homeschooling right now. What's my why, right? Why did I design my whole life the way that I designed my life? I have 4 kids that I'm homeschooling, right? Like sometimes I have to keep it that simple. I just have to go, I don't have to change the whole world. It is an honor to get to speak and like hopefully encourage and support parents. At the same time, like that's what matters most. So it's always, what's my why? And just like Aaron said, like when are we the happiest? Recently, Aaron and I did an Ironman together. It's pretty awesome, super fun, a lot of work. One of the coolest times in my life, because Aaron and I had this awesome system. We were eating a very certain way, we were mapping it out, we had our workouts mapped out. I had a sitter for certain hours of the day, so I was getting relief from the kids. I was getting filled up every single week. It was more like maintenance. Right? We were maintaining our health, our emotional health, we were maintaining our marriage. Aaron had like a very...
Daytimes built in.
Right, because we were trying to train for this Ironman, so we had like this goal and this focus, so everything had to be focused on. And it was there's like this beautiful chemistry that happened during that time, because we had a goal and it flowed downhill into my kids' goal, which was amazing. All of a sudden, they're eating healthier, they're working out, they're wanting to run on the treadmill. And our whole family unit kind of like balanced out because we had this one goal. Well, once we completed the Ironman, which was amazing, like we haven't had a goal really since. This week we went on a huge road trip that I mentioned, and we felt that energy. Like I feel like I'm back on track. I'm feeling very full and like ready to jump into next week, especially after one life. But it's just figuring out like what are those things that fill you up, and stop waiting until you're on empty before you fill yourself up. Like maintain, right? Like find those things and do those every day. People are going to talk about that for the next 2 days. You're going to hear this over and over, right? Like gratitude journal. Wake up an hour early, meditate, pray, read the books, listen to the podcasts. So those are my good ones. Like what's my role and what's my why and when was I the happiest? And when I ask myself those 3 things and really journal on it, I get back on track pretty quickly, I feel like.
Yeah. You know, and some of the part that why that why is so important is sometimes being a mom is like the most thankless job ever.
True that.
You got people on social media or reaching out and going, hey, I want you to coach me. Hey, I want you to do this. Hey, I want to pay you for this time. And the kids are like, make me a sandwich.
Yeah.
Right? And you're like, what would you rather have? Right? But that's also what we got caught up with back in like 2010, 2011. Part of like the fall of what happened with us is we had all these people in business telling us like how awesome we were. So we were like, you know, let's just raise our kid and let's just go build these big businesses. Because that feels really cool. When somebody's like, hey, you're a titan of industry, like that feels really, really cool. And when she was like the biggest broker around and people were like, you're the best person to be able to buy a house from, that feels really cool. And the kids say, make me a sandwich. Yeah. So sometimes by remembering that like some of the times that feels thankless. But if the big goal at that beginning of that why was, we don't want to die with regrets. We don't want to have things left on the list. It helps us remember, like, why are we doing these things, and why sometimes do we have to say no to the thing that may feel a little bit more glorious and glorified, to stick with what our plan is. I also want to, we'll open it for questions in just a second. Part of as you go through and look at those rules, I want to give you permission to, like, throw out the stuff that's bad. Like, if that means, like, hiring a sitter more often, like, that is a big deal in our life. Not doing, like, outsourcing the laundry. If that is something that makes you miserable and it's part of, and you're spending 10 hours a week doing it, 15 hours a week doing it, outsource the laundry. When we started doing that little thing dramatically changed our life. Because Kaleena didn't realize before doing this that she was spending so much of her time every week trying to worry about that with 4 kids and a husband that goes through clothes like crazy, right? And how much of her life was she spending on that? And it wasn't, if it was one of those things that she said, hey, I'm spending 15 hours a week on it, but it also really fills me up. Because some of you doing laundry might fill you up, right? It might make you feel really good and feel valuable and you love doing it. And do it. Some people, when they do dishes, it's like, cooking for the family is an example where some people go, no, that really fills me up. And some people go, no, I dread it, I get stressed about it all the time. Look at those things, and you have permission to actually analyze it and go, don't let somebody tell you, like, no, as a husband or a wife, you're supposed to be happy doing the dishes, you're supposed to be happy cooking, you're supposed to be happy doing the laundry, you're happy mowing the lawn. Some husbands love mowing the lawn. If you do, mow the lawn. And if you don't, then outsource it. Because the other thing too, when we had this new mindset, right? The 5-hour school week was the idea of taking the 4-hour work week and applying it to our kids. Right? An hour a day of focused learning, and we have the rest of the day to go travel, go to museums, have this family time and experience. You know, as we go through that, but it was like going, hey, let's take this new lifestyle, and what can we do to make our lives better, and make sure that every moment matters. So any questions? Anybody have any?
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point. Yeah.
I have so many questions.
Whoa.
Well, a lot around homeschooling, because like one of the reasons why I wanted to come here with my family was to like kind of pick your brain on what y'all are doing. So,
Well, we should talk afterwards too. Then
totally.
whatever.
So you like if you're only teaching them for 1 hour a day, like are they gonna pass? You know, they're gonna graduate high school.
I love that question so much. Okay, so if we're gonna go. Okay, 10 minutes. We got 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, so if we're gonna go down the homeschool path. When it comes to mindset, you gotta get rid of stuff like that, like enough, right? Should be doing, because there isn't this perfect formula of what we need to know. I'd really love to just spend time talking to you, because what it comes down to, like, you're gonna have state requirements, but there's ways around all of that depending on what sort of a philosophy that you want to teach, right? Like, we're more of an unschooling philosophy. We let our kids lead their education, choose what they want to learn, and really just follow it down the rabbit hole until they don't want to learn about it anymore. They're very self-directed in the way that they like get up and they work through whatever they have made a goal for, right? Like, we treat our kids just like we treat ourselves. I set a goal, I set an intention, I go after it. I have my kids set a goal, set an intention, and go after it. When they ask questions, I ask them to follow that question and find the answer, just like we would as adults. And so I'm not worried. Number one, I have a 12, a 10, an 8, and a 3-year-old, so I'm not really worried about a diploma right now, although there's 800 different ways to get an actual high school diploma other than sitting in the high school classroom, even as an unschooler. So it's really just about figuring that stuff out, and also what's important to you. Like, what do you actually think your kids need to learn, and why do they need to learn it? I don't, like, if Maddie, which she does, is, again, right now, we've gone through this for 3 years in a row, like, will not touch math. Like, it never ends up on her intentions. She won't, she hates it. Like, she's a writer and a creative, and math is, like, not her jam. And so I don't make her do math. And, like, once a year, I know, I love that look. I love it. No, bring it, it's fine. I love it. I know, it's fine. Because then what has happened, once a year, last year what happened, Maddie stumbled upon a geography lesson on time for learning, just a curriculum that they play around with, and she got hooked on it. And in 1 week, she went through like 5th grade geography, right? Just like that, boom, 1 week, the entire lesson, because she did it for like because we focus on 1 hour, but my kids don't choose to just learn for 1 hour anymore. In the first year or two, it was gnarly, right? Like, it was like getting them to do that that 1 hour was like pulling teeth. We're going into year 4, my kids get up and they have a whole list of things that they want to learn and do. And so, go, what?
Well, to add to a couple things with that, like, philosophy too, like, all of the 90% of the jobs our kids are going to do in 10 years haven't even been invented yet, right? And so that whole classroom mentality of, like, they have to learn what the state says, like, the stuff that made me the most successful, I did not learn in the classroom. And I couldn't have learned it in a classroom. So the reason we do it like this is we say our hour a day gets them like that minimum to keep up with what the other kids are learning in school. But the real thing we're teaching them is the life lessons outside of that. Yeah. But even with the math example of the part of why the 1 hour a day works is 1 hour a day of focused learning on something they love learning. They learn much, much faster. When you have a topic you love, and so sometimes it is about saying, don't do math, don't do math. Like, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Because eventually they get bored of the thing they were doing. And then they go open up geography, and they learn a whole year in a week. And so part of why that focus works is we let them choose, because I promise you, eventually, if they're like, hey, I don't want to do math, I just want to do this, eventually they switch it over. Now, there is some state stuff, and like some of those hacks, you should definitely talk to Kaleena offline, depending on how to get that out there. But I believe absolutely if we put our kids back in the classroom today, they would be at the same level academically as anyone in the classrooms that they left. And because of the way that we've done it. And for like the math example, Maddie's probably like 7th grade in English and like 4th grade in math, but in the next 5-6 years, it's just gonna average out.
Yeah.
Right? She's advanced in some and behind in others, but it averages out.
Brandy, go.
I wanna add to that, Hooli just got tested because we just started at Acton. And remember how, she's the same, 2.5 years, we
Not
barely
even-
did
yeah.
any math.
Yeah.
And she's at 50 percentile in her grade level.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Doing nothing.
Doing
Right.
almost nothing.
Right, and if you
There's-
spent 4 weeks and that became your focus, right? Like you're like, oh my gosh, my kid is behind in math. What are you? And she actually needs it. Like here's the thing: if she actually needed it for whatever reason to complete a project, or it was going to add actual value that she needed
Or a test.
to use that, or even to pass a test,
Right.
they will learn it like that. You know what it is, because it's all they're focusing on, and now they have an actual reason. And that's the problem, is we're often teaching just because, and we really try to teach for value.
Right, but Aaron, you've told this story a few times, and it's so incredibly powerful. When you guys were on vacation or something, and Maddie got behind on her homework,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you sat with her, and she did about a week's worth of
Yeah.
schoolwork in
2 hours.
2 hours,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, and that's exactly what we've seen. And I wanted to show this other story to support what you're saying. There's a kid at Acton right now that just did all of his junior and part of his senior in the summer.
Yeah.
Exactly. All of the curriculum, and that's what Jeff from Acton talks about.
Right.
Is that you, in 3 months, he can get any child up to speed.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
and that's what happened to Hooli with math.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reality is like everyone gets freaked out with their older kids in high school and this and that. You go to 1 semester at a community college, which kids can start going to community colleges usually at 14 in most states. 1 semester equals 1 year of a class. Are we done?
No, we have 5
We have 5 more minutes. So you like 1 year of community college is 4 years of high school.
Perspective
It's a
shift.
big perspective, because it's
Yeah.
like, so what are we spending our time on? What are we teaching right now that adds value? Go.
Really quick, just to add on to what Brandy said about that story, we discovered it by accident.
Yeah.
Like our philosophy
not that
of
smart.
That's why I love that story.
the 5-hour school week, it happened by accident. We were still going to school at the time. We went to Yosemite for a week, and our daughter forgot to bring her homework. And at that time, we were very, very strict. But there's no phone, no internet there, and we're in Yosemite, and we were like, I guess let's just make the most of it. And we went and we spent a week hiking and learning from junior rangers and all these life skills and life lessons. And we came back on that Sunday, and to make a longer story really short, she was stressed out. I said, let's just sit down and do all your homework.
Yep.
We sat and we focused for the next 2 hours. We did a week of homework. In that time, I taught her long division. Long division got introduced in that week that we were gone. That's stressful for like a 3rd grader when that's first getting introduced. So at the end of that 2 hours, she had it. We finished it. She was like, wow, we did that 2 weeks. And we went to pick her up from school the next day. And she said, Dad, you'll never believe this. I'm the only one in my class that knows long division. They didn't even get to it this week while we were gone.
Yeah.
Right? And so for the next couple weeks, she was way ahead of her class from that focused learning mindset. And so we discovered it by accident.
Okay.
Is that our son out there?
Yeah, you wanna get him?
I'll get him. You can finish
Okay.
it.
Okay, or bring him in.
So 4 kids, an hour each, or do they do their work together?
It's really up to them. They
Okay.
get to, and specifics like that we can go, but they really pick their time.
Cool, not the main question. The main question is, okay, so you had a career,
I did.
and now you don't?
I don't. Well, I have 5-hour school week. So here's what, this is gonna be so crazy to a lot of
Because as a
people.
mom, like I have my career that I love,
Yeah,
and then I have my kids that I love,
yeah,
and then I have the hustle and bustle of mornings and and drop-offs and pickups that I hate,
right?
but I don't have the full capacity, I don't feel like I have the capacity to be like, I'm gonna sit down and teach you because I
Right.
have that patience. I don't feel like where in
Oh,
my
yeah.
life I have that.
Okay, so number one, that mentality is the first thing I tell every single parent to throw away right away. Like, do not think that you're like teaching your kids, sitting down to teach them. Like, they need to be supported and facilitated, and really it should be on them, self-directed. Unless you have one that's like this age, right? Like, I have a 3-year-old, he is very hands-on, he is busy, he takes my energy. The girls, truly, we have a powwow at the beginning of the week. We set our goals, we set our intentions, what are you learning? We fill him up in the mornings, we run and we go outside and we fill him up, and then the girls know what they're working on, right? Like the girls go into it, they self-direct their learning, they have a plan. Like Sunday night, go over with your kids. Do you work from home? Or can you work from home?
ish.
Yeah.
There's seasonal work that I want to be there.
That you want to be there,
Long hours.
right? And so then it's just like figuring out what that hybrid is, figuring out like where can I pull in help, where can I pull in support? Do I have a co-op in the area that can help me with this? My kids go to a free to learn community, which is an agile learning center that supports like unschooling, which is what we do. And so it's just finding those resources, because like I write a lot, and like I also need my time. Like working out keeps me sane. Like all the things I'm doing my life. Living your best life isn't about your kids having an awesome life and you just falling victim to that. Living your best life with your kids means living your best life so they watch you. So like it's not about giving up your career, it's figuring out how to fit your kids inside this life that you're creating together. And so that takes getting creative. Like I don't have an answer that will
Right.
like for everybody, because your lifestyle is different. It's a lot of juggling, right? Aaron works at home, I work at home, like we're all over the place, we travel a lot, he's gone. It's just that creative vibe, you know? That's
I think
okay.
we're out of time.
Are we out of time?
Just come talk to me.
So-
Okay,
I
oh.
just want to know about your YouTube video.
Oh, okay, yeah, so in all the places to find us, so we have an awesome book, I have an awesome son. I have, hold on, buddy, I know you want that, he's like, I need a
So
mic.
one of our, so 5hourschoolweek.com/links. It'll have a link to our YouTube page where Kaleena has a good series about I want to homeschool, but there's 10 or 15 videos in there. Tons and tons of information there, 5 to 10 videos each. Find her on Instagram. It's at 5 Hours School Week. Find me on Instagram. You can email us. You can so that's Kaleena at 5 Hours School Week spelled out. But if you check out our, we've been on lots of different podcasts, but the YouTube series is great. Join the mailing list. Kaleena sends out a mailer, once a month that talks about what we're doing now. Tons and tons of resources. And again, you can grab us afterward too. Like I said, one of the reasons we're here, we want to inspire people and be inspired, and we can't talk enough about different stuff to do moving forward. So, did I forget any places? I mean, Instagram, but then 5hourschoolweek.com/links. There's kind of like 8 different links on there to get to.
No, that was it, you just answered it.
But you do a post every day on
Yeah, on Instagram's a really cool place to follow me, because I do really give you an inside look into like how we learn together, where we're at, where we're learning at.
If you grab one of
Like all the
these too, it
different-
has some of the Facebook, the Instagram of those.
All the things,
Cool.
all the things. And thank you so much for coming. And literally, if you see me anytime or you wanted to ask me any questions or talk about anything, I'm pretty approachable. I mean, I usually have a 3-year-old on me, but other than that.